Hello and welcome to the special broadcast of ThePrint. I'm Yogendra Yadav, and with me is Akshaya Mukul, journalist, author, and someone who's written this astounding book, fat book. This is the biography of Agyeya. And in case you're wondering who is Agyeya, when you were in school and read Hindi literature, you must have read something by Sachidanand, Hiranand, Vatsyayana, Agyeya. And like me in school must have wondered, what a tongue twister of a name. That's Agyeya, one of the most towering figures of 20th century Hindi literature. And this is the first properly researched biography of Agyeya. We are here to talk about the book, which has come out from Penguin. And I'm told it costs, 999 rupees. Ek rupaya bacha diya. Writer, rebel, soldier, lover, the many lives of Agyeya. That's Akshaya Mukul's book. Akshaya had also written earlier a path-breaking book on the Gita Press in Gorakhpur, which is called Gita Press and the Making of Hindu India. In 2015. So that's the second major publication. And we are here to discuss that. Mukul bhai, first of all, my congratulations. क्या शानदार किताब लिखी है आपने, सच में मजा आ गया पढ़ के. पहले तो मैं डर गया. Such a fat book. I said, कहाँ फंस गए?
Almost 250 pages are like the end notes.
The end notes. That's a relief part of it. मैंने पहले तो सोचा कहाँ फंस गए इतनी मोटी किताब पढ़ने में. And there were times when I cursed you. कि अच्छा इतना लंबा क्यों बता रहे हो, थोड़ी छोटी कहानी बता दो ना. But at the end of each section, I was grateful that you gave all those details. Because it's not merely the history, it's not just a biography of a person. It chronicles the times. The time of, I would say, the Hindi public sphere. It chronicles the journey. And what is so astonishing is the amount of research. I mean, I can't think of many historians who would put this kind of research that you have put in. And you said, because you got access to Agyeya's private papers.
Very lucky.
And the man kept his private papers very well. 20 trunks of it, you said. Yeah, it's there in the preface.
It's there.
20 trunks of private papers. And you seem to have gone through all.
Yeah, each and every page of it.
Baba, how long did it take you?
The entire exercise of accessing his papers, going through them, took me a year, almost 8 months, and then it took me another 6 to 8 months to make sense of it. Because, the papers were going in all directions, and what had happened that in the later years, some people might have seen it and they had made a complete mess of it. Because when you see what Agyeya had done, he was very meticulous about things, but that thing was kind of disturbed by the later researchers. I don't know who all saw it. So yes, it was an arduous exercise, but also I realized that it still doesn't tell the whole story.
And you consulted so much else. You are in Tinmurti, you are researching all over the world.
Yes.
Tell me a little more about what else did you consult?
I consulted, yes. When it comes to Agyeya, what you know better, you've been a reader of Hindi literature, is that there's a great amount of myth making when it comes to Agyeya. On both sides. Those who love him, those who don't love him. So the idea was, for instance, there are 2-3 things about Agyeya which people will tell you very loosely. He was a CIA agent. He was this, he was that. Revolution, this happened, that happened. And I realized that when I started searching, I found things are available. It's tough to get them. It's expensive to get them. But I became a little obsessive about it. So
it's labor of love. It comes through.
It's a labor of love. And so Chicago had all these Congress for Cultural Freedom papers, which had full of Agyeya. Some papers were in Stanford, James Burnham papers. Some bit was in Rockefeller Archives in New York. And in India, for instance, the entire revolutionary period. And I'm kind of surprised that people talk in great detail with great authority about what happened.
Without looking at those papers.
Archives are very much in Delhi. In fact, this Delhi State Archives, one of the best maintained archives, had the entire papers, and the same set, a copy of it, is in National Archives. So I'm surprised why people never bother to go and see.
So you went through all of that.
I went through those 1,500 pages of revolutionary years, the 4 years.
Yeah.
So much so that, you tend to kind of get obsessed with, right? When you find new material, you tend to write everything.
But you can't write something like this without being obsessed.
Yeah. So I became kind of obsessed.
You and I share something.
Yeah.
Shekhar Ekjeevni was the first novel that I read in Hindi, like you, just like you.
Same.
And it was quite something.
Yeah.
And then, for me, the first truly romantic novel that touched me, unlike other things that I had read, was Nadi Ke Dweep.
Yes, same. Now, in fact, if you ask me, I find Nadi Ke Dweep, maybe it's the age. Maybe when I read, I was 16, 17, Shekhar. I found that blew me away completely.
That's right.
But now, if you ask me, with hindsight, maybe I love Nadi Ke Dweep more.
In fact, so do I.
Yeah.
These are two novels written by Agyeya. Shekhar Ekjeevni, which is a novel which is a straightforward autobiographical novel based on his revolutionary years and thereafter. And Nadi Ke Dweep is a novel that comes much later. Both, of course, are deeply psychological novels, just like whatever Agyeya did. But one thing I discovered from your book? Everyone in the world knew that Shekhar Ekjeevni is autobiographical. Yeah. But I did not know that Nadi Ke Dweep was also autobiographical.
Yes, more autobiographical.
Exactly. Including that thing about kicking that platform ticket.
Yeah.
And getting onto the train. You remember this is the first 2 or 3 pages.
Yeah.
Even that is autobiographical. That really...
In fact, if you find the letters to Kripa Singh, which he's writing, or what Kripa is writing to him, are part of Nadi Ke Dweep.
Exactly, yeah.
And when see who's telling him in real life that don't go to Assam.
Yeah.
Only fools go and fight war.
Yeah.
You're too much of an intellectual. Are you going to take orders from some officer? And he still goes and he writes a limerick also, off I go to Assam and all that. And when I read, I said, oh God, this is complete. It's like he's taking it out in the novel. Everything that's happening between him and Kripa.
So I'm not a scholar on Agyeya, but I had honestly never known that Nadi Ke Dweep was so autobiographical in novel.
This was a discovery.
That truly is a discovery. Other reason why I like the book so much is that, in a sense, it complements your Gita Press book. Gita Press shows you one face of the Hindi public sphere. Regressive, conservative, downright communal, and very parochial. And, I hold a bit of a grudge against all those who show just this one face of Hindi, because in the more anglicized circles, it's very fashionable now because you know English and you know nothing else about this country. So those who speak Hindi are conservative and this and that, the usual colonial mentality. Now, this book brings out the other face of the Hindi public sphere, which is modern, which is universal, which looks up to, which has a span which is truly breathtaking. In terms of vision. I mean, only someone like Tagore could not match. I would say Tagore, of course, excelled it, but just as Tagore lifts Bengali literature to a level which is genuinely international. This is the face that comes out, and not only from Agyeya, but everyone else who's
his contemporaries. In fact, the entire generation, as you rightly pointed out, this whole thing about the way English world looks at anyone who speaks Hindi or reads Hindi literature. And here you find this entire generation of writers, Agyeya onwards, are so well, they're bilingual. Again, you'll be surprised that almost 60% of Agyeya's papers is in English.
Yeah, and I realized from your book...
the first version of Shekhar is in English.
It's only from your book I realized that this was almost a first language to him, and how late he comes to Hindi.
Yeah, and he says it also. And that's his constant, in a way, angst about the Hindi world. In fact, later, almost in 86 or something, he writes to someone that, the Hindi world never took me as their own. They have stopped reviewing my books. He's keeping unwell, and he's generally very detached from the happenings of the Hindi world. So English was his first language, and Hindi world, the Hindi establishment, so to speak, always saw him as an outsider. Partly there could be various reasons. One, he didn't come from his so-called Hindi heartland. He was a Punjabi. He came from originally he was from Punjab, who grows up all over India, and then So he remained a rank outsider to the establishment, and therefore he's constantly fighting with the establishment. There's something other that at times left is attacking him, at times others are attacking him, and with left, of course, it became a long drawn battle which he kind of fought till the end.
A very bitter battle.
Very bitter battle. Very bitter battle.
I have a theory, if I can float it here, which is that those, and there are many in Hindi literature for whom English is very important, who are English teachers and so on. Those people who write in Hindi and have a very good command over English make it big. Those who have Hindi and nothing else, they remain Hindi walas. The world doesn't.
Partly, yes. Also, yes. Agyeya also is first of the generation, maybe who's very cosmopolitan, also because of his upbringing. Therefore, everything he does in a way is quite open, be it his relations with women. So he's outsider not only because of his Sanskritized Hindi or the Hindi he speaks or writes, but also the life he leads. He's so unlike, as you said, the Hindi walas.
Yeah.
And they constantly look that he's an oddball. What is he doing? So you will find people, even when they criticize him, they talk about his crisp kurta pajamas, his dressing, his food, his class. So that comes in the way of entire, the way when you look at Agyeya, it's not only literature which is getting attacked, his writing which is getting, even the man gets attacked for completely
absolutely
for reasons.
And these factional battles of the Hindi world, I mean, they are quite something. His Sanskritized Hindi, he uses a Hindi which is very. Do you remember something? Rag Darbari has a slight parody on Agyeya. Because Agyeya makes lovemaking into almost a spiritual exercise, and Rag Darbari has a full parody. I mean, everyone can say this is Agyeya's parody.
And strangely enough, one of the first person Srilal Sukhi gives the manuscript to read is Agyeya.
Okay, all right.
And he's so consumed by this idea that it has to get published, Srilal Sukhi, that he tells Agyeya that, look, I'm willing to leave this government job because, in government you have to show your manuscript. And he's mocking the system. The entire novel is mocking the system. And he tells that, if nothing, get me a job in Denmark. So there is a whole exchange. And when Agyeya is leaving Denmark, among the list of people he gives out who should be considered, one of the names is Srilal Sukhi. Of course, he manages to... so he reads and if I am not mistaken, Agyeya had some role to play in the title of the book also.
I see. Okay.
So they were in close touch.
The book is sort of full of these tiny little stories, lovely stories. And the third reason I really like your book is the sheer objectivity. And this is not the first biography of Agyeya. An earlier biography was written in Hindi. But that's sort of almost an official biography, as if this is what Agyeya wanted written about himself.
He was in close touch. In chapters being seen by Agyeya, it got released on his 75th birthday in 1986.
So it's almost an authorized biography.
It is.
What you do in an amazing way is to not hide almost anything. There are a large number of things, and while you retain empathy, there were times, honestly, as a reader, I felt, what are you doing, Mr. Agyeya? Especially about women. I mean, I felt, you're just using them one after another. And how do you, but as a reader, it was hard for me to keep empathy for a man that I have loved so much, I have looked up to. Agyeya is something in Hindi literature. You managed to not brush anything under the carpet, nor lose your empathy. That must have been hard.
Yeah, it's been hard, but also I'm kind of, it's I don't know whether it's a word to use in an interview, but I'm also a biography junkie. I read biographies a lot. And one of the things, and I have seen there are many biographies which have influenced me, of course, from Leon Adele to Robert Caro and Lyndon Johnson. And one of the artist biography is this John Richardson 4-volume biography on Picasso. And mind you, Richardson was a groupie of Picasso. He waits for Picasso to die, and after that he starts this project sometime in the late 80s. And the 4th volume came, and these 4 volumes are only 40 years of Picasso's life. He knows everything about Picasso. He hangs out with him. But you should read those 4 volumes to see how he has maintained that distance, and he's been brutal to him. So, or Brassai's conversations with Picasso. So these have been my role models, and I have kind of, I generally like biography. What is a man if he doesn't have too many saints? Agyeya used to say himself, I contain multitudes. He'll always quote Walt Whitman and say, I contain multitudes. So let's sow the multitudes. There's no point hiding that his relationship with his sister. His own brother is writing. His brother
which
is
is
writing.
actually, in a sense, foreshadowed in Shekhar Ek Jeevni
Yes.
itself. Yeah, it's sort of there.
And my
Indumati
only
is
thing
there as
was
a
that
character.
I should not rely, on these matters, I should rely only on archival stuff. I should not go by interviews, because I did interview almost 60 people for the review. And at the end of it, I kind of abandoned, except for my interview with Krishna Sobti and to some extent Namwar Singh and Kuan Narayan and others. Mostly I kind of didn't use them, because I realized that if I ask you, at least in my case, if you ask me what I ate 2 days back, I don't remember. Here I'm asking someone what happened 40 years back. So, and if you ask for the same event to 3 people, you get almost 5 versions. So what do you do? So I relied on this. I was very clear that Agyeya that I love will not become a very different person if I still saw him in what he's doing to women. He almost writes same kind of letters every time he leaves a woman, right from Santosh to Kapila to Kripa to everyone.
Very painful to read that part of Agyeya. Someone you've looked up to, and then you see all this. In fact, I wanted to challenge you on this. And the challenge is this. You say he's a writer, rebel, soldier, lover. I think he's only a writer. Everything else that he's doing, just to challenge you, everything else that he's doing is field work for his writing.
Yeah, kind of. I won't disagree with that. I won't disagree with that to a large extent. But yes, the time when he goes to, for instance, let's talk about the soldier bit.
Yeah.
The time he goes, he's facing great resistance.
It's almost as a writer is saying, I've exhausted my stock, I've exhausted my field notes. So let me go to the field and pick a few more impressions and so on and come back and write more.
Yes, partly that. And he's also very intensely involved with the politics of the time, the whole battle on fascism, and he sticks his neck out. Very few writers were saying that, look, the larger battle is fascism right now. So let's side with the British. And the left uses it to destroy him completely, that he was. And the question they ask is,
incidentally, at that
a
time,
revolutionary of the 30s joins British army in the 40s. How does this happen? So the easy way to paint him is that he's always a stooge of the Raj, which is not. Which is very
surprised
unfair
me a bit, because actually in 1942, the left itself, the official left, is also not in favor of Quit India movement. So actually it's a very small difference.
It's a very small
which is being blown up.
And then they say that as a kind of, he gets full-time job in All India Radio, which he never did. He never had a full-time job, in fact.
Just to get back to the theme, he becomes a soldier. He's not a soldier.
No, he's not a soldier.
No, in what he's doing also, in terms of his mind, even when he's a rebel initially, he is, his transition to becoming a rebel is unlike the many other transitions. He's there, he's kind of drifting into it. He's not passionately there.
It's not. Which he later, in fact, uses. He says also when it's a long thing, when he puts in the commission of inquiry, saying that he, in fact, denies everything. That must have been a way to get out of it.
And if you ask me, even as a lover, he's not quite there.
There is an interpretation. Some people thought, in fact, I asked this one aspect of Agyeya's life to which I must have considered many psychoanalysts. Sowed letters. Some, Kripa Sen writes 100 letters to which he writes 1 letter. So what is it? Maybe search of mother figure. His relationship with mother is very, very skewed. It's non-existent. Mother doesn't exist in his literature, in his writings. He, in fact, a week after mother's death, he is in writing to Janendra Kumar and he says, what is wrong with you? You write the 3rd paragraph of the letter that your mother passed away and you are trying to get out of Lahore. So So he is in search, but but many of my women friends, many of the people I showed letters to, they said, no, he is extractive, which he is to a large extent.
I'm afraid
Yeah.
that comes out.
It comes out, and these are
Most of these-
exceptionally bright women. These are not your ordinary women.
Absolutely, I must confess.
These women are ahead of the times. Look at Kripa Singh. She's talking of hitchhiking in the 1930s. She's studied in England. She's conversant with many languages. She's part of the social
And look
elite.
at Kapilaji, the
Look
one
at
woman
Kapilaji.
who comes
Yeah.
out such gracefully, and she refuses to give you her papers.
She refuses to give papers.
But I
And
think there's something very dignified about it. She says, no, something that happens.
Yeah,
It's best between a man and woman.
Yeah. No, she
And
said,
this
you will
go
never
with me."
understand, because
Yeah.
I kind of irritated her for 4 years. 4 years, 2020 February is the last I went to see her, and I said, look, I want to see the papers. And I gave her a few examples from her, and they said, look, Akshaya, you have been trying, you don't understand love. It doesn't end with a man walking out of the house. And that I decided now enough. And unfortunately, she died the same year in September.
But what she comes out as one, I must say, as a partisan of Kapilaji. I'd known her, admired her. She comes out so much more graceful than the man she loved.
Absolutely.
Including the last ritual that you mentioned. When Ila asks her, please, it's so moving, that part. It comes, so women come out
that
gracefully.
in a way brings them together.
Yeah, unfortunately, our hero doesn't come out gracefully from all this. He doesn't. What next?
I'm working on JP's biography for the last 1.5 years.
Another of my hero.
Okay.
Okay.
I know. So, so JP, that's taking me again for archival work. I've done the bit in India, almost 80%. But his stuff is lying all over the US, some 4 or 5 places. So I'm going sometimes. So I'm a very slow writer. I procrastinate a lot. I get waylaid by newer things, and I go in search of something. So another 2-3 years.
Everything that you've done is truly worth it. Actually, this is not merely. And I was discussing with Om Thanbiji, who knows infinitely more about Agyeya than I do, or others. And we agreed it's not merely the best biography of any Hindi writer. It is certainly a model of how to write. Not only about writers. I mean, I would generally say this is a model of how to write biographies. This is an amazing achievement, and I can't tell you how proud I feel as a Hindi person. I'm a Hindi wala. At my heart, I'm a Hindi wala. I speak English. Kaam chalao chala lete hain. But I'm a Hindi wala, and I feel so proud that someone has done justice to Agyeya. Thank you.
Thank you.
Delighted. So proud. Thank you.